Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Nseyo. I'm a practicing OBGYN in the East Bay, medical director of women's health for Sutter Health East Bay, as well as a podcast host of a show called Golden Hour FM, where we have honest conversations about what it really means to give birth in today's day and age. Today's conversation is deeply personal, as it is globally urgent. The US has the highest maternal mortality rates among high-income countries, and those inequities are even starker for Black and Indigenous women. Around the world, millions still give birth without access to basic life-saving care. It's a crisis, but it's also a call to action. I'm honored to be having conversations with two trailblazers who are rising to that call. Christy Turlington Burns, founder and president of Every Mother Counts, whose 20-year journey in maternal health has helped raise nearly 50 million community-based, respectful, and equitable care worldwide. And Elaine Welteroth, award-winning journalist, best-selling author, founder of the birthFUND, whose bold voice and visionary leadership are changing the narrative and resources around maternal health in America. Today, we'll explore how storytelling, systems change, advocacy can come together to create a future for every mother, every birthing person to receive the care that they deserve. Let's begin. I love how cozy we are on this couch. And you guys, I didn't get this color combination memo. I'm upset. I came bright with the yellow.
You look gorgeous.
Okay, thank you, thank you. So let's begin with your story. I think we were talking before we came out on the stage a little bit about your story, Christy. Elaine, love that I get to meet you right here on this couch. But I love.
Thank you for saying my name correctly.
Yeah, thanks. Christy helped me. We practiced. Make sure your mic's on. But I'd love to get your origin story. Christy, do you mind elaborating for the audience while Elaine gets her mic going about your story, what inspired the work that you've been doing now for 20 plus years?
Okay, thank you. Hi, everybody. I became a global maternal health advocate the day that I became a mother, which was 21 and a half years ago, in fact. The children, they grow. And after an incredible pregnancy and being at a place in my life where I was very much ready to become a mother and take on the responsibility and all of the things that come with motherhood, I had great access to care in New York City. I opted for a midwife and a doula to be my support team in a birth center within a hospital in Manhattan, which no longer exists today because it's harder and harder to have birth centers function in this country. And after even the pregnancy or the birth itself, and everything was going perfect to plan until it didn't. And that was my experience of postpartum hemorrhage after my daughter was delivered. I had a retained placenta, which, this is a doctor here, so most placentas, for those of you who have become a parent before, usually it's kind of like it just happens. I watched a few live births. I didn't expect there to be any drama with it, but mine did not, and so that needed to be managed actively with the team of providers that I had. I felt centered in that care, and I was taken really good care of, and everything was fine. But I went home, and the first thing that I thought of was, what about all the other girls and women around the world who don't have access to this care, or a team like I had, who worked together to be able to manage the complication, make sure that I was taken care of, that my daughter was taken care of, that my husband was informed about what was happening throughout the process, and that we were able to be safe and come home and carry on. So that experience sort of opened my eyes to what I would later learn was a global maternal health crisis. Hundreds of thousands of girls and women at that time in 2003, I think the estimates globally were 500,000 women and girls dying every year. And that number hadn't budged in decades. Decades. And there was something called the Millennium Development Goals that were sort of at the midway point when I became a mom. And that's when I kind of learned that, wow, like maternal health is lagging. This is a crisis and nobody's talking about it. My friends weren't talking about it. People weren't talking about it. So that sort of, I don't know, it just led me to want to ask more questions, and those questions opened the door to, unsatisfactory answers, and that set me on a path to go back to school to study public health and then make a documentary film where I explored the challenges around the world and in the US, and then to start the organization, Every Mother Counts.
Yeah.
So it's been a long process and a journey, but one that I think is really essential. And that's why I love being on stage with Elaine here, because she is like the new force to this work, which is what is required to keep a movement going. It's new voices and new experiences to bring new people into the conversation, so that together we can achieve what is very achievable, which is making sure that moms and babies are safe through pregnancy and in the postpartum.
And Elaine, please go ahead.
Well, I just have to say, I feel like I'm on the stage with one of my icons in both the fashion industry and also in maternal health advocacy. So I'm pinching myself that I have the opportunity to share the stage with you. What a dream come true. And another thing we have in common is that we're from the Bay Area. So hello, Bay Area. Thank you for welcoming us back. I love to be here. So what is the question exactly? Because we could really, I mean, how much time do we have here?
I appreciate, Christy, you sharing your origin story, right? I think we all have what gave us purpose, what brought you in. Christy, your story is something that for me as an OB, I've managed those postpartum hemorrhages. I've managed those retained placentas. And you can walk away as a patient from that experience feeling traumatized. So the fact that you left that experience feeling centered, and if anything, you're inspired to pay it forward, and you've paid it forward, I don't know, a gazillion fold, and have had that global impact, that's what anchors us. And so I think for you, Elaine, what is your origin story? What gave you purpose? What helped you decide to create the birthFUND?
Yeah, well, similarly, it was my birth experience.
Yeah.
I am a journalist first and foremost, and so I understood this issue of maternal mortality and maternal health kind of through the lens of statistics only. It was very disconnected from the human impact, and certainly from the experience of someone like me. I think like a lot of us in the room, while we may or may not be aware that there is a surging maternal mortality crisis in this country, not just across the world, but particularly in this country, which is something I actually didn't know until I became pregnant. You know, I heard the statistics around Black women dying at 3 to 4 times the rates, which just makes you feel fearful of becoming a mother. And for a lot of women, they don't find it out until they're pregnant. And at that point, they just sort of bury their head and hope for the best. And they just advocate for themselves. And we know we need systemic change to support these mothers, right? But I didn't recognize until I was pregnant that it was actually so much worse than I even thought. For all of us. Like, this is not a Black woman's problem. Nope. This is an all of us problem. And America is the deadliest place to give birth in all of the industrialized countries, with all of the wealth that we have, with all of the access to technology. So going into birth, even knowing all of this stuff, as I was finding this stuff out, I thought, I think I'll be okay. I have access to insurance. I have access to the best doctors in LA. I have a great network of supportive friends who I can lean on and ask for good doctors. Well, I thought, how hard could this be to have a baby in America?
It's hard.
You know, with the resources that I have.
Yeah.
And I mean, how naive. 8 doctors later, I thought, okay, this is not me, this is the system.
Yep.
And it is broken, and it is underserving women. And if it is underserving someone like me with the resources that I have, I can only imagine how women and birthing people are being treated in maternal health deserts, women who don't speak English as their first language, women who don't have access to education and the right questions to ask. My issue with doctors was I was asking too many smart questions for them. I was annoying them. And I even had a doctor tell me that this was my 8th doctor, so at this point I was like hanging on by a thread. I had no birth plan. I was going into my 3rd trimester. I was devastated, disappointed. I felt like I had been diminished from this confident, empowered person that I had become mostly, you know, throughout my career, to now being, you know, really I felt hopeless, fearful, and just like a shell of myself. And I shared that with the provider. I came in very vulnerable and said, I've had a really hard time finding the right care provider. I trust that you're the one. It felt like I was going on like speed dating with doctors. And this woman, in the middle of our conversation, sorry, I revealed that it was a woman. I didn't mean to do that. This is not about men or women. This is not even about, this is a system breakdown.
Yeah.
But the doctor said to me, you have exceeded my 2 to 3 question max.
Oh.
I have given you grace, but I need to go. And she stood up and walked out. And before she walked out, I said, I don't even know how I'm a journalist, so my questions were right here. And I said, well, let me just ask you one more question. What's your intervention rate? And she pursed her lips, and she said, I don't know what you think this is, but everyone needs something. You can't just walk. And I kid you not, guys, I wish my husband was here to say, like, I was there, I saw this, because it actually sounds like comical or like it's something that only happens on TV. She said to me before storming out, I don't know what you think this is, but you can't walk into a hospital, pop a squat, and just have a baby. Everyone needs something. Those were the final words that I would ever hear as a pregnant woman from a doctor in the medical system. And I thought, I am going to find a way to pop a squat and have a baby the way women have been doing it since the beginning of time. And if I have to do that on my own terms in my own home, that is what I'm going to do, because I no longer feel safe here. And so, unlike a lot of people in this space, I just really wasn't aware of midwifery as an option. And the people that I thought about who did home births, I thought, maybe I'm not that kind of girl. I'm not that mom, you know? But it turns out, like, you know, there's a reason that there's so much stigma around midwifery, and there's so much unlearning and relearning that we have to do, and it starts with us. And so it started with me. In my 3rd trimester, under duress, I was introduced to the midwives at Kindred Space LA, who are actual angels doing God's work on this earth. And they took me in, and I really feel like they gave me my power back. With every conversation, with every answered question, with every time they held my hand, they came and saw me at home. They exposed me to a model of care that I did not know was available. And that is me, someone with a lot of questions who digs into things. And I can only imagine, and I know for sure, most women in this country do not think of midwifery as the first option. And what I know as a journalist now and as an advocate around this issue area is that up to 80% of maternal deaths would be avoided with midwifery care. And yet it's not covered by insurance. And yet it's shrouded in mystery and stigma and stereotypes. So similarly to you, I felt called to action. I thought, if I survive this birth, I'm going to tell everybody about home birth and my midwives. And then it didn't stop there. It felt like telling my story wasn't enough. It felt like I have to go beyond just telling my story. I have to start building solutions and showing up to this conversation, not with just fear-mongering, but with solutions. And for me, the first step was raising money so that families who want access to midwifery care will not have a financial burden or barrier standing in the way of that care. Because I truly believe that a safe, joyful, sacred birth experience is not a privilege. It should be a birthright for every single woman across the world, but especially in this country, if we have anything to do with it. So I called on some friends, and I said, will you join me in raising a fund, and let's just get to work immediately. And so we are 1 year into it. We've raised $3 million for maternal health and for direct access to families. So we have more than 100 families, or nearly 100 families, that we've supported, and we're just getting started.
Amazing. I mean, the energy for me both is palpable on the stage. I hope that you guys are feeling it as well. And one of the things that resounds with me the most is honestly anger. As an OBGYN, I am ashamed that you had to get through 8 OBGYNs to finally find the care that you deserve. What that final OBGYN doctor said is cringeworthy. You only deserve two questions, 3 questions, get out. And I want to give some grace to those doctors that you saw, that they're under just as you left feeling that you're under duress, they were under duress of a broken, fractured healthcare system. Absolutely. The 3 of us are on this stage because the healthcare system is not serving women, birthers, and their families the way that they deserve. That I have the fortune to work within that system, and I'm fighting my own little fights day in, day out, but you to have the power of your voice, of your connection, of your ability to amplify the voices of those who aren't in this room, amplify the voices of those who don't have the means and the courage and the ability to do so. With that being said, you guys are true firecrackers and catalysts for change. What have you found to be the most effective in both of your arenas and both of the spaces that you work in to make change happen?
Gosh, I mean, I think the simple thing of sharing stories is so important. We don't share our birth stories. I think if we did, and if birth was sort of acknowledged as the transformational, like, experience that it actually is, then I think we would get to the point where we are deciding whether or not to become parents and thinking like, oh, I actually do know what my rights are and what my options are. But because we don't do that, and we find ourselves, I think most pregnancies, I mean, half of pregnancies I think are unplanned. And so given that like obvious fact, it's like we're learning this information too late. Like we're already starting behind the ball. And so I think like normalizing birth, physiological birth, and any birth or way of arriving to parenthood, because there are many options today, which is wonderful, and also even more daunting for people who are considering this journey for themselves, because it's a huge responsibility, let alone investment. I mean, like, the cost of birthing care is ridiculous. And most of that is not going to the provider, right? The doctors aren't seeing that money, right? It's a system that is like absorbing a lot of that, and it's putting people in a very, very vulnerable position. So I would say the sharing of stories, it's simple, but it's something that we continue to do. And then the more people are feeling, knowing, connecting, the more likely they are to advocate at whatever level that might be, whether it's calling your representatives when Medicaid is under threat like it is today, or whether it's, you know, reaching out to your elected official, or whether it's going to events where you can ask that question and like, are you prioritizing maternal health in the hospital that I'm thinking about having my child in, or in the company that I work in? Like, it's empowering the individual with information and self-advocacy to be able to ask questions. And then I always feel that if we have options and people are informed along the way and supported, then people make a decision, and then an educated decision, and we get behind that person and we let them get the experience and outcome that they want.
Yes. Yeah, shared decision making.
Amen.
Go ahead, Elaine.
Well, I mean, I honestly, I think everything that you said, I would just double click or underline. I think, you know, what we're trying to do at birthFUND is make midwifery care mainstream and make it something like, as you said, we are not educated about our options about when it comes to childbirth. And if we are, it's way too late. And so my goal is to sort of leverage some of the storytelling skills that I've learned throughout my journalism career, particularly at Teen Vogue. You know, I learned how to kind of put lip gloss on activism and how to make it sexy and make it something that feels like I think about building birthFUND almost like a D2C brand, like a community you want to be a part of. And I feel like we're doing our job when someone who is like Gen Z, like in their early 20s or mid 20s, who's not even thinking about having kids, is like, I think it's so cool that you're doing. I'm like, you do? Like, because when I started this work, I truly thought people are going to think the exact opposite. Like, it's the least sexy conversation. It's like when people's like eyes go just glazed over. And so if I can do my part to just make it a part of the conversation for younger people well before it's time for them to, you know, give birth or become pregnant, I want, like, that's the dream, right? And so trying to leverage culture shifters and people who are in the conversation across industries, bringing them into this conversation and like leveraging their influence is something that I'm trying to do. So with my first kind of, I raised a fund with 10 founding funders. And it ranged from Serena Williams to, you know, Aisha Curry and LeBron James. Like, sports is a great way to get people's attention, by the way, and we all know, I mean, many of you in this room might have heard Serena Williams' birth story, and I think that woke up a lot of people. Like, if the strongest woman in the world and one of the wealthiest, it almost died because her doctors didn't listen to her, how safe does that make me feel, right? So I think, you know, mainstreaming the conversation, mainstreaming midwifery, and lifting it up as a choice. And it's not at all about starting mommy wars or saying that, or we're not anti-doctor. It's really about making sure that families and birthing people know what their options are and can make the right decision for themselves. And if they choose this alternative pathway, that they have access to information and resources. And so we have partnered with Birth Center Equity, which is a network of 40 BIPOC owned and led birth centers all across the country. And we have essentially, tapped those midwives to say who in your community is a good candidate for midwifery care and desperately needs resources. And they connect us with these families apply, and we pay their medical bill. It's as simple as that. And the beauty of this work is that it's meeting the ground floor. Like, I am not someone who comes from wealth. Okay, I'm from Newark, California, New Park Mall, shout out. So like everybody, it was a great place to grow up, but I didn't know anyone who considered themselves a philanthropist, okay? Let's just say that. So part of this work is making sure people understand that they have a role to play in ending this crisis. That we can't wait for capital P philanthropists and insurance companies, which are not incentivized to change, or even lawmakers to do the right thing by us. It's on us to save us. Yep. And whether you have $5 and can contribute on our Instagram fundraiser, or you have $100,000 or $1 million, we welcome you. Yeah. And there's a transparency. There's a human. What I felt needed to be changed about how we think about this issue in philanthropy is like we need to showcase the human impact, which is why we focus on direct access, real-time funds to families, and we tell their stories, we show their faces, you see the babies, if they want to share them. Like, we can save lives in real time while we work on changing laws and making systemic change, because we do, it's both, it's and not both. No, sorry.
It's both.
Mom brain, I had a baby 6 months ago, forgive me. It's both.
And.
Yeah.
And. Both and.
Not
Thank
either.
You.
It's and.
Thank you.
And.
Thank you. Every mother counts in this conversation. We need all of our brains together. So I would say the thing that has worked for me is if you build it, they will come. If you build a clear call to action and you invite everyone to the table and you help them understand with data, like what the problem is and how to fix it, and how they can be a part of it, people show up and do the right thing. Yeah. My mind is blown. I wasn't sure this was gonna work, I'll be honest, but it seems to be working right now.
And I love that, because what Elaine's doing, and I didn't know about the partnership with BCE because they're incredible and we support them as well, and a few in particular, but you're funding the families and we're funding the providers.
Yep.
And so we wanna make sure that the providers continue to be trained, strengthen diversity, build the workforce, because we know, like we were talking before backstage, this is an industry too, because of the broken system, where providers are not being cared for. It is hard to be a doctor, it is hard to be a nurse, it is hard to be a doula, it is hard. Because the emotional wherewithal that you need to support someone else in their journey with the sort of wraparound supports that are lacking in our society as a whole, it's a lot that falls onto the caregivers, family members included. So I think, that's just a really beautiful way for us to complement, because it's true, you want more people, we want to compensate the people who are doing the work and having the better outcomes and caring for people in the way that people deserve, but we need to get them both to each other. We need to sort of close that gap.
Yeah. I mean, sitting up here with you two ladies, I see a two-pronged approach to a massive, global and local national problem. I think, Christy, you're bringing the decades of global health work that you've done now in training it in the US with training birth workers, especially birth workers, midwives of color. You are advocating for midwives. You're making sure that people feel educated and aware that they have that choice, that they have agency, and they can make an informed decision on getting the centered, respectful births that they deserve. I feel, as a woman of color, as a first-generation American, as someone who went into medicine because I saw that statistic of my likelihood of dying giving birth, and that what powered me through really hard biochem classes at Stanford and grueling hours of residency for this moment, right? Because I worry day in, day out about my own birth outcomes, the birth outcomes of my sister and my cousins, knowing that I don't necessarily have the reach and the power that you do, but I feel hopeful, I feel inspired. I know that thanks to people like you and the many people behind the scenes on each of your teams, we're moving that needle. And everyone in this room was birthed. And so the fact that people are unaware of what a huge problem this is unacceptable. So keep shouting it from the rooftops, keep fighting the good fight, because there are so many more generations beyond us who deserve the good care that we're advocating for on this stage. So thank you, ladies.
Thank you.